Good evening, everyone. Dr. Mulrooney here with the amazing Scott Alexander from iVelocity. So tonight we are talking, hello, sorry.
Yeah, that's right. Hi, everybody.
I'm just going to take control of the whole thing. So tonight our topic is pivot your practice. So we are both very excited to be here helping to give some advice in the marketing realm as well as in dental practices. And we'll be also introducing you to our new program that is launching next week. We're hoping to have it ready.
Yep, that's right.
And yeah, so let's take it away.
Yeah, well, great. So one of the things we were talking about just before we went live was essentially where are we right now from a practice standpoint, and what do we need to be thinking about in terms of driving the overall health of the practice. And so just to kind of give everybody a perspective on where we are, right, in case you didn't know, there's a thing called COVID, had a little bit of impact on our practices. We're just a skosh, right? And so I think we're at this point where we're seeing the reality of what the world is going to look like for really the rest of 2020.
I don't think we've seen the full reality though yet.
I agree. Yeah. So what have we not seen? I'm going to be your straight man. Like what are we going to see? What comes next?
Well, there's still a whole bunch of Bandaids on top of people's businesses and practices because we have these government assistance programs. And once we rip those Bandaids off, I think we're going to see the reality of what's actually happening. And in the US, your Bandaids are going to get ripped off sooner than they are in Canada.
Yep.
So I think, once all these subsidies are pulled away from our practices and we have to try and thrive on our own, we're going to see a lot of things emerge that maybe people haven't even anticipated.
Yep, that's absolutely true. I agree. We're starting to see here, south of the border, we're seeing a lot of the PPP money. So this is the funds that everybody can apply for, covered 2.5 times your monthly salary. So that money's running out. It was intended to basically last 8 weeks, and for a lot of people, if you were first in the door, that 8 weeks ended last week. And so we're starting to see practices are starting to realize that. The other program that is going to be coming to an end, which is going to have some pros and cons. Again, this is all stateside. In Canada, you have a little bit longer program windows, but the $600 a week additional stipend for unemployment is going to be going away in the relatively near future. And so what that means is twofold. One is we saw this weird trend. We were talking about this last time we were on, where it's more economically advantageous for folks to stay at home than to work.
Right.
Well, thankfully, from a productivity standpoint, that's going to be going away. And so, we're going to start to see those dynamics. If that's affected someone's practice, we're going to see those starting to fall back to some sort of normalcy. The other thing that we need to be aware of is that additional payment going to individuals is actually helping to prop up the economy. And so when you see unemployment rates like we're seeing in the U.S. and Canada that are pretty high, mid-teens, mid double digit, 15%, give or take, 15%. What we're going to see is people are going to start tightening their purse strings. People are going to start being a little bit more careful about where they're spending their money. And that's going to have an impact, particularly if you're in spaces that aren't necessarily geared or prepared, I should say, to maintain that pipeline of patients coming in. And you're just kind of relying on whatever's going to come, whatever's going to happen. I wouldn't want to be in that situation right now. So.
Yes. And I think a lot of people are not taking into account that, yes, there's this backlog of patients right now.
Yep.
But once that backlog is caught up, there's a bunch of patients who are no longer in the pipeline. They don't have insurance. They haven't had jobs. They're afraid to go into a practice because of what they've heard about aerosols and everything else. So we're going to have people who are waiting till the pandemic is done, unless they absolutely have to come into the practice. They're going to be holding off. So I think come September, when things have gotten caught up, because a lot of dentists are not going to be taking necessarily vacations this summer so that they can try and make up for the quarter of the year that they were off. There's going to be a reality check that might come pretty hard. I hope I'm wrong, but it's very likely that come September, we're going to see that we're not moving as far ahead as we hoped we were.
Yes, I think you're right. I think what we're going to find is there still will be demand for services, everything from, we talked last time about the role of emergency dentistry. And again, I would highly encourage any of our viewers that if you're not running campaigns or have outreach for emergency patients, you're really kind of missing out on one of the best opportunities. We'll get into kind of what a good marketing plan looks like in today in just a minute, but it should be a key piece. You should have a plan for how you're bringing people in. They're not huge dollar cases, but they start to establish that relationship. So when we see emergency, we see hygiene, we know that's going to keep coming in. We know we also can expect probably earlier here in the US, a little bit later in Canada, we should expect that we're going to start to see more buyer discretion, more price sensitivity when it comes to higher end services. So things like implants, things like aesthetics, cosmetics. We talked about sleep and kind of the valuable aspect that may represent to a lot of practices. That may be one area where, at least as we're forecasting what we're going to see, we think that we're going to continue to see strong demand in the sleep space. We'll dive into that in just a bit. But practices need to be aware that, hey, there will be more price shopping. And it'll be more price shopping because, number one, people are watching their dollars and trying to figure out what's going on with the economy. And then two, the dollar decisions are now in the hands of the prospective patients. So what does that mean to the practice? What that really means, and this is an area that is a particular, this really falls into your expertise in particular, is the individuals who come into the practice need to feel something different. They need to feel something special. And like the reality is, let's talk about lemonade, right? We're taking lemons, turning into lemonade. Angela and I joke about the fact that I have 4 kids and they're very loud. You may hear them in the background. I'm willing to pay a lot more money for lemonade that my kids make than what I could buy from the store. And why is that? I'll pay $1.50 for a jug of lemonade coming from the store. I'll spend $150 for my kids because I feel something different when I drink, the lemonade that my 4-year-old Coco made. There's just something special about that. And as we think about the care that we're providing through the practice, we need to think about that. Like, how is somebody looking at what I'm doing as being different and more valuable than what they can get down the street? And while our value propositions haven't necessarily had to be super tight before, now they really need to be locked in. And again, this is something I know is like right in your wheelhouse.
Yeah. And we talked last time about kind of people being feral right now, and they're like down to the essence of who they are. People are seeking connection more than ever. And if you are authentic and real in your practice and you step off that pedestal of perfection, you're going to have people connecting with you more, and they're going to want to buy into what you are selling. There's been so much talk about like local businesses supporting them, but dental clinics pretty much are local businesses unless they're owned by, say, a consolidator. But those people who they feel like they're worth investing in, they're more likely to spend with them as well. And the more honest you can be, the more real conversations you can have, the more you can actually be empathetic of what is happening with the patients. So you need to think of patients as customers, not just patients who have to come in because you're a service provider. You have to have a very different experience for them, from when they see your marketing to your social media to when they interact with your practice. They are looking for a lot of different things. And I think a lot of dentists aren't realizing there's a lot of people floating out there right now who are considering changing practices because you didn't keep them informed about what was happening. You didn't take a leadership role. Even though you weren't sure how to handle the situation, you just stuck your head in the sand, and they go, well, don't have respect for that. And now you're still not communicating with them authentically. You're putting up stuff that everyone else is putting up on their social media, and you're blending it with the scenery. That has turned a lot of people off. And I think you talk to a lot of people. I know a lot of people that I've talked to who are professionals outside of dentistry have asked me, do you know any good dentists in this city or that city? Because they are not impressed with how practices have handle the situation because they hid from the issue. So there's an opportunity to be capturing that, which is where, the paid advertising that you do, the social media that I do is really going to help to get people connecting with the practice. And you need to take this seriously, because you're going to find out again in September how many people you have potentially lost because you didn't nurture the people that already knew you and they wandered off to another practice.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing that's, I'd say the biggest shame, and you and I, we were joking, like, you have a room set up for video. I've got my own like lighting and that sort of thing. I'm not quite as blue as I was last time. Right, it's changing the scenery. But
your friend.
right. I feel like for many, it can feel intimidating to actually do some of the things we're talking about. And so, one of the things that we find and we share with our practices, I'd be curious to get the conversations you have with the practices that you have the opportunity to work with, is we share it does not need to be complex. And so, quite literally, we tell people, here's your iPhone, right? That's good enough. If you want to get a nice little stand, spend $15 on Amazon for one of those little stands with the little legs you can mold around. That's all you need. You don't need to get fancy about this. I think it's pretty easy if you're not comfortable with talking on camera or things like that. It can be really intimidating. But the reality is, that's what people are looking for is that authenticity. They're looking for somebody to be genuine and honest and not fake and plastic. If you're thinking about your practice, or you're thinking about a dental practice, you went into dentistry because you care about people. I'm assuming, right? For everybody on the call,
I just like teeth.
Yeah, you like to bite stuff. So yeah, it's just like an unnatural love for floss, whatever the reason is, right? People tend to come into dentistry because they want to take care of people. I don't know.
That's typically the reason we give when we're on the entrance interview to get into dentistry, is I want to help people. Yeah.
So just do that and just tell people that. If you stutter and stammer and sweat a little bit, that's okay. Because the two things, number one, if you don't do that, they're going to go somewhere else. And then two, people like that kind of relationship, and to see that, hey, we're not all perfect, and this sort of Facebook perfect, like, it doesn't exist. And so if your Facebook perfect is sweating a little bit and stammering a little while, that's perfectly fine. Do it and go with it and let that be who you are.
Yeah, it's funny. Actually, one of my influencers from the dental industry was asking me this week, she's like, so do I have to be like perfect on video? She's like, can I sometimes not have like perfect makeup and perfect hair? And I said to her, that's what we want out of you. We want to see the real you. And she's like, how do your videos do, the ones where you have just gone for a run and you're doing your like level up with Ange challenge? And I'm like, those are actually the ones that tend to trend on LinkedIn more than my perfect ones where I'm sitting in my studio here recording perfect content. So people engage with what they can relate to. Perfect is not relatable. Like, you and I get along because we are just ourselves, right?
Yes.
When I hang out with people who are trying to be perfect, I feel kind of uncomfortable because I feel bad about myself, because I'm like, well, I'm not good enough. This person is way better than me. But when you actually have that human connection, and your patients know that you're a doctor, they know that you're a hygienist, they know that you are highly trained to work in a practice. So there's that intimidation factor. And if you can let your hair down and just be who you are, that actually helps them to also feel better in the practice, but they're also going to be able to connect with you because you're real.
Yeah. It ultimately comes down to that, right? Dental care, right? There are certainly levels of dental care, but I bet if everybody was to think about other dentists in their area, there's probably somebody who's almost as good, probably not quite, but almost as good, can give comparable level care. So why do your patients stay with you instead of going to somebody else? It's because they identify with you and they connect with you. So as we think about kind of what does it look like in this kind of June, July, let's call it summer into early to mid fall, one of the things that we highly recommend, well, it's essential. You need to do this. If you're not doing this, then you're probably not, watching this in the first place. And second of all, you may not be in practice, but just to call a spade in like October, is we need to be thinking about how are we bringing patients in. And it really comes down to, you have to have a strong marketing plan.
Always.
Always. Yeah.
Plan. Not just once in a while when things get rough. If you always have that robust plan, then it carries you through the hard times, right?
Yes. It's one of those things. It's kind of like it's kind of like pushing a car. Like, have you ever had a car die on the side of the road? I have a long story for when that happened to me in Denver. But anyway, I survived, which is great. But when you start pushing it, like, it's really kind of hard. But once it gets going, you get the momentum with you, things get really easy. And that's how you need to think about marketing. Is if you're not doing it today, it's going to take a little bit of time to get it up and going. That's just the reality of it. Let's call a spade a spade. But once you get that success and you actually start to see patients coming in the door, patients referring other patients, it becomes exponential, right? The value that you put in grows over time because you have that momentum.
And that's true with the short-term strategies as well as the long-term strategies.
Yeah. And you're right. I mean, if you're going to be successful, we need to be thinking short-term and long-term, right? From our perspective, right, on the paid side, we kind of think about 3 buckets of patients that you need to be thinking about. So number 1 is your current and previous patients. And you mentioned this, Ange, you need to be reaching out to them, right? If you're not sending out emails and updating, posting organically on Facebook and actually doing that sort of outreach, you're going to lose them. So if that 1,500 patient practice will become a 1,200 patient practice, or maybe less. So you got to think about, what are you doing there? And then more importantly, how are you taking those patients that exist and then actually helping them, giving them easy ways to bring their friends into the practice, right? So we talked about this earlier, where we're seeing this, right? You got all these people that are kind of in flux. I'm switching dentists, just as an aside. So as we're doing that,
your dentist know that?
She doesn't. But
now she does.
So as we're doing that, there's a lot of people that are in flux, right? So it's not just like protect the people that you have. This is also an opportunity to help other people see the high quality that you provide in your practice. So current and previous patients, got to focus on how are you leveraging that. Then the next piece is you got your active seekers, right? These are people who are actively seeking for a solution. So I got jaw pain, TMJ, right? Sleep apnea, I got missing teeth, whatever, right? I'm going to go to Google. So you need to have a strategy there, and you need to have a broader strategy around like active seeking, because what we should expect to see is people are going to be looking for it, but then they're actually going to go to your website and they're going to check out your social media profile. And like we said earlier, just tying the pieces together, your average consumer for the higher end dental services that you can provide are going to be more discerning than they have been in the past.
Yes.
And so how are you putting all these pieces together so that they want to come to your practice, or they'll start having a big hand? You coached me on this, by the way, to get my hands all aggressive. I'm going to sit on them. I'm coachable, people.
You are.
So, yeah. So how are we actually making sure that your entire web presence and your social media presence is dialed in, not to perfection, but to uniqueness, to that thing that's going to make you be the person they're going to come to. So that's kind of the second piece. And this is the last piece, and then I'll stop rambling, is these people who are the engageable afflicted, right? We talked a little bit about sleep. We'll talk more about sleep here in just a bit, because it's such a great place to be in dentistry. There's huge populations of people that have given conditions that are not actively seeking for solutions. And so to see successful practices grow, it's things like Facebook and what you're doing on Facebook from a paid campaign standpoint, Instagram, that sort of thing. This is true for cosmetics as well. You're going to want to do outreach. And so again, we have to know that people are going to be more discerning about the whole picture of the practice. So if you have those 3 things and your social media is really, is dialed in and that it's authentic in you, I think those practices are really going to be successful.
For sure. And for those engageable afflicted, they may have a problem that they don't even know how to solve. They don't know how to ask the right questions. So if you're presenting those solutions on your social media, not just talking about COVID, we do need to talk about that and talk about the elephant in the room, but you can also mix in some stuff that gets them dreaming about what the possibilities are. And, you mix that in with showing off your personality, your expertise, your passion, your experience, all that stuff bundled together is what makes you unique. And if you take away any one of those things, then you're like everybody else.
Yep.
But no one has a 4-on-4 match with all those different parameters. So you have to really think about how you can highlight all those things so that you can be, let's call it, we were talking about this earlier, a unicorn in the market, even though I don't like unicorns.
That's right. You are a unicorn.
I'm not. I'm a warrior.
Yeah, exactly.
But yes, that ability to stand out in the market, and you do need to highlight those 4 different dimensions of who you are so that people can find you. And part of that is including new skills, which is part of what we wanted to talk about, was diversifying your practice. Because if you try and do the same old, you've got all your eggs in one basket. Well, the basket may hit the floor and all the eggs are broken. If you have a few eggs over here and a few eggs over here, you've insulated yourself from a little bit of risk.
Yeah. What is that? Before we jump into that, because I think that's a critical piece. What does that look like? So if somebody is listening or watching and they say, "I'm bought in," like, what do I do? Help me get my social media presence where it needs to be. Like, maybe peel a layer back about like what a video should look like, how they should do it, just high level stuff.
What I would suggest is, well, have at least a decent camera so that you don't look super amateur with what you're doing. So a little bit of good lighting, even if it's just natural light coming into your practice, is a good thing. But get yourself and your team on the video, talking about what you're passionate about. Like, one thing that makes me gag when I see it is these people took these pictures and did what everyone else did, which was, "I miss you," across the picture. And I'm like, that doesn't tell me anything about your practice. So that's a snapshot, might be a great picture, but it's boring and doesn't tell me anything. So what I want to see is you guys getting on there and talking about what you're passionate about, why you love dentistry. Talk about the skills that you love to be able to offer patients. And even if it's the most basic of skills, you actually showcasing who you are and showcasing your personality is way better than what everyone else is doing, where they're posting those generic things like I just talked about. And people are going to start to see that you have a passion. People who are passionate versus people who are good at their job, they're going to pick passion, because we automatically assume someone who's passionate is going to do a better job for us because they're engaged in their work and they love what they do. And it doesn't just have to be the dentist. Like, get your team members on there. Don't just take pictures of your food and all these things that people tend to do, which again, it doesn't help your practice. It's very generic. We want to see who you really are as a practice, and that includes everyone in there. So yeah.
So let's talk about passion, because I agree wholeheartedly. We're in the process right now. We're hiring for Facebook specialists, so the guys and gals that actually get in and do the ads for us. Yeah. And we're interviewing a couple people, and I asked one question, and I knew immediately which person I was going to hire. I asked this person. I said, "Hey, tell me about Facebook." And his eyes lit. I mean, again, we're talking. It's an interview about I do Facebook for my job, and his eyes lit up. He's like, "Man, let me tell you. Did you know they changed this algorithm?" And blah blah. And like, he starts firing in all this stuff, and I didn't have to ask any more questions. Because the passion came through that, like, this guy, you could put a brick wall in front of him and then a computer and a picture with Mark Zuckerberg, and he's going to run through there to get to his Facebook. And so I never have to worry about, is he going to be up to date with the latest trends? I never have to worry about, is he going to be checking, making sure that we're doing right by our clients? Like, never going to check that, because he cares about it. He loves it, and he's in it. That's maybe you're not as animated as this young gentleman was, but because it was really animated. But that sort of passion and being able to sort of show that I care about dentistry, I care about taking care of patients, that comes through. And that's what people are looking for, particularly now when, there's a lot of unsettled stuff. So yeah. But by the way, you and I understand this implicitly. Maybe it's worth kind of spelling out really clearly.
Sure.
When it comes to your social media presence, it comes to paid campaigns, your website, you name it, video is 10 times better than images.
Absolutely.
Right? And so, yeah, I mean, we're all for, again, we're running Facebook and Google campaigns and email campaigns for client, other things for clients, but and we embed pictures. That's nice. Stock images here. You get pictures of the practice. It's here, but like it goes really, really high when it comes to video from the doc, from the staff, just being natural with themselves, showing that passion. That's what brings people in. So I just think we really need to hit that home.
Yes, and being natural on camera is something that you actually need to practice, because I know I've worked with some really talented speakers, and when we sit down to actually do a video, they freeze and they lose all their personality. They become almost monotone because they're thinking so much about being perfect. So when you're going to be doing these things, you're going to have to take a few runs at it before you get it right, which is actually, when I say getting it right, it means you've let down your guard, you've stepped off that pedestal of perfection, and you're just allowing yourself to almost forget that the camera is there and just talking. And sometimes it helps to have one of your favorite people on the other side of the camera, just making fun of you in between and getting you laughing, so that your personality does come through. Because if there isn't a bit of fun in it as well, we tend to be very monotone and kind of boring and, not so interesting to pay attention to. Yes.
Yeah. And then they bounce from that to YouTube to watch cat videos. So, I mean, what you doing with? But as soon as you get that sort of personality and people get to know you, like it really works out.
Yes.
So we talked a little bit about kind of what that practice looks like. Share a little bit about, as you see diversification, like what are you seeing from your side of things?
What I'm seeing right now is people are kind of holding back on diversification because they're like, I'm so stressed out. I need to make up these bills. I don't want to invest in expensive CE where I have to pay for it because I've gotten all this free CE, so I don't have to worry about my points for the next 2 years. But how you're going to help set yourself apart is not having the same skills as everybody else. And there's lots of skills that people are looking for. Okay, they might not be looking for Botox right now. They might not be looking for, actually, if they have migraines, they're probably looking for Botox, but they're not looking to get rid of the wrinkles. They might not be looking for high-end cosmetic work. They might not be looking for full mouth reconstruction unless they're in pain. And honestly, the stress of COVID has actually pushed a few people to get more consults on full mouth reconstruction. That's not what patients think of it as, but they're like, I'm in pain, my bite is uncomfortable, and because I'm stressed, I'm feeling it more than ever. So having those skills to be able to support those people as they come in, and they may not be able to afford it right now, but if they know that you're the go-to person for that, and they've developed that connection with you, and when things get rolling, they've got insurance back, they end up having a little bit more padding in their finances, then you are the person that they're going to want to come to. So you're building up, by developing those skills, you're developing a bit of goodwill as well moving forward, because they know that, and if they see you still investing in your skills and trying to better yourself during this time, they're going to view you very differently than the one who sits back and is just like, I'm just going to stagnate for a while. It's tempting to want to stagnate because, we don't want to spend money that isn't going to help us, but we are going to get to the other side of this. And there's going to be people who need more than just the basic of care. And if they found you for the basics of care and you've had an authentic discussion, a real discussion about what is really happening in their mouth, so they know that when they get to the other side, there is a solution that you can offer, might not be affordable right now, but it's going to be there for them. That is something that's definitely going to set you apart. And there's lots of different skills that we can be pulling into our practices to help be different. And if you get really passionate about that, and that becomes something that you really love doing on a daily basis, and you talk about that, then patients, again, see you as someone different. They see you as an expert, not just the average dentist.
Yeah. Are there particular areas that you would suggest folks look into in terms of if they're going to diversify, kind of what are the first things to look at?
Sleep, as you mentioned before, I think is one of those amazing things because it's not something that's going to go away. If they've developed that problem, it's not going to go away without some help. And it's one of those, I honestly think it's one of the biggest return on investment skills that you have. Once you've bought the equipment, and it depends how you want to be treating them, but you can go from everything to having like a rhinometer, pharyngometer, to just learning a technique that is a bit simpler than that. You can have your overnight sleep test, or you can be partnering with a sleep clinic. But when you get to keep caring for these people, not only is it worthwhile financially, but if you want to be actually making a huge difference in people's lives and really getting integrated and involved in their health, sleep is one of those things that we only know like a tiny bit about it. There's still so much mystery around sleep. And there's a lot of research coming. It's one of those things that we think is potentially going to be just a specialty in dentistry where people can focus 100% on that. So if you get in with it right now, you're still a little bit behind the curve because there's lots of people who have figured out already. But if you wait too much longer, you're going to be even farther behind. And patients are getting educated about all these things. So if they see that you're lacking a skill that they've seen another practice that they went to has it, they start to wonder, well, why don't you have it? And they're going to think of you as a little bit lower caliber of a dentist than the other practice that they went to.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. You and I have talked at length about how much I love sleep. I have 4 kids, so I haven't seen it for a long time. But I hear it's a wonderful, wonderful hobby to have. Right? Yeah, it's good times. So more importantly, for a dental practice, it really is, I think it's a lot like implants were maybe 10 years ago, right? Where it's just becoming available to folks. It's in terms of like GPs that are interested in getting into it, like it's available. If you have a general practice, you should be offering sleep.
Yeah.
The exact modalities we can talk about, but it's something that a significant percentage of your population deals with. They need solutions to it. Sleep feeds all sorts of things, and yeah, it's a rewarding thing. So particularly if you've been in practice for a little while, right? Hunched over, you may have if you're starting to get back pain or things like that, neck pain, which are very common conditions. The great thing about sleep is it really doesn't require a lot of that. So it doesn't require any of that really. So you're actually able to have a meaningful, productive practice for longer periods of time without that wear and tear on your body through something like sleep. And frankly, just letting you know, like it's our bread and butter right now in terms of it's so straightforward. Like the campaigns and the ways to get people into the practice are really straightforward, and you can do either maybe a little bit different up in Canada, but at least in the U.S. what we're finding is you can have a practice doing sleep that some can be reimbursed, so reimbursed through health insurance, even through Medicare, and then others are cash pay. And we see case values that rival some of the implant cases. $8,500, $10K for treatment. So yeah, great.
Yeah, and it's a great way to develop a referral program with other healthcare practitioners because your physios are going to be seeing it, the chiros are going to be seeing it. Medical people are going to know that some of their people are intolerant to CPAP, so they need to go the other route. And you can start developing this network, which again, too, if you have that network that you can be referring back and forth, your patients see you as a completely different person than if you're just in isolation in your practice and you just keep to yourself. If you're like, well, I see these TMJ problems and we see other things happening in your body that need to be dealt with, we should be referring you to your chiropractor or your physiotherapist or your medical person. And they start to go, wow, you're actually part of my healthcare team, not just a dentist.
Right. Yes. Yeah. 100%. That's one of the things that I see dentistry moving into or getting the recognition that it deserves in terms of it is part of healthcare. Right. And so as we think about things like sleep, we think about things like pain. Those are healthcare issues. Those are not just dentistry issues. It's not teeth. It's a body pain kind of thing that we have. So sleep is huge. TMJ you mentioned is another area that basically people don't like to be in pain. I don't drop a bomb that nobody's thought of before, but nobody likes to be in pain. And so if you're looking at diversifying the services you can provide, to the extent you can help take people out of pain, what you're going to find is you'll have people that are ready to take that step. And so if you find joy in terms of total mouth restorations, in terms of treating TMJ, and you see that part of your practice, I think you're going to find a very strong interest from your patients and from folks that would benefit from those therapies.
Yes, and I think even addressing things like periodontal health is a big thing because, like, I think it must be hailing outside right now because it's really noisy in the house. Periodontal therapy, a lot of people they're trying to prevent themselves from having to go to the dentist. So I know a lot of my friends are flossing a lot more than they used to. But that's something that they're becoming aware of, that their tissue doesn't feel the same as when they were regularly getting treatments, which again, something that you're finding really quick wins with the paid advertising is that if we're advertising hygiene, people are wanting to get involved with that. And I think there's a lot more bleeding gums out there than there was pre-COVID, probably due to stress and diet and everything. People are brushing their teeth once a day because they don't have to go out for work. Even some dentists have been doing that, I've heard, which is kind of gross, but you know who you are.
We're only judging finally on that, so
yeah. I brush mine at least like 3 times a day. It's really bad, but
I'm an aggressive brusher. That's so yeah.
We can talk about that.
Yeah, I know exactly. Well, you helped out my wife, who has unfortunately gets cavities like nobody's business, no matter what she does. You helped us out with that, so now I'll start becoming a patient too.
Yeah.
I think diversification is key. The other thing is, as we think about some of the restrictions that we're going to see in the practice, right? We can't have a waiting room full of folks, right? And so the things that we think we're going to see will help practices be successful is, number one, you need to increase the overall case value of your patients, right?
Per hour. Yeah.
Per hour. Yeah, exactly. Per hour. And so the way you do that is helping identify additional issues that could and should be treated, but then also bring in different types of patients. So, as we talked about last time, you need your hygiene and your emergency, sort of the core of your practice, to be healthy, but then you absolutely need to be increasing, getting higher case value patients in, or else overall the production for the practice is going to decline. So you got to think about that. The other thing you need to think about is, or that you can take advantage of, is right now we're what, 1,000 miles apart, maybe more than that, probably 1,500 miles, right, which is roughly 62 kilometers.
That's not right.
I know. Yeah. I should actually know that because I used to run 5Ks a lot, so I should be able to do it in my head. But 2,500 kilometers. Right. So we're 2,500 kilometers away. Not even close. I'm sorry. That it was 62. My apologies. My parents are from New Brunswick. They disowned me. Here's the reality of it, right? Serious face. We're many distances apart, right? A quarter of a parsec. We're a far distance apart. We're talking on Zoom or on a video chat. You should be using that in your practice, right? Whether it's Zoom, it's Google Meets, whatever the case might be. If you can't have as many people in the chair, and you have things like sleep, you have things like implants in your practice, you're doing other consultative or other patient consultations, you should set up a room just like with lighting and make it nice, and then actually do virtual consultations. That's going to increase your productivity by hour, because you don't necessarily have to take that chair time away from another patient. You can have a practice manager or a case manager actually doing those kinds of video calls.
Yes. And have them doing them at home too.
Yeah. We do a lot of, and just looping back to sleep, because everything comes down to sleep. Spend a third of your life doing it. We do a lot of marketing for sleep practice, for dental practices doing sleep. And we've actually found that for the practices that are doing virtual seminars, the number of attendees is up by about 50%. So whereas you may have had 10 to 12, now we're seeing 15 to 18 individuals show up for video calls. Mm-hmm. And the reason why is it's more convenient. I don't have to get in the car. I don't have to fight traffic to get there. And you can actually take a bigger radius, right? And so if you're requiring people to come in your office, they have to make that decision that fighting the traffic is enough. So your radius that you can actually pull from is smaller. But once somebody says, you know what, Dr. Mulrooney is going to take care of me, I'm willing to drive maybe not the 2,750 kilometers or whatever it takes for me to get there, but I'm willing to drive more. So you're actually able to serve more patients if you bring virtual care into your practice.
Yes, absolutely. If you're not embracing the technology right now, you're going to get left behind. So embracing skills, yes, but also embracing technology and what we've been moved forward into and what the possibilities are. The practices that get on board are going to do better. So, agreed.
Yeah, it's kind of like CE for your practice, right?
Yes.
You know, I mean, you don't get to just kind of shut it off and say, hey, look, I learned how to, I graduated from, dental school in 2004, and so now I'm kind of done. Like you don't get to do that. You don't get to do that on your clinical skills. You shouldn't expect to do that on your business skills either.
Yes.
So
Agreed. And don't do it on your marketing, which we should talk about our program that we're rolling out.
let's talk about that. Sure.
Yeah.
We're in the program.
We're doing a program, yeah, and it ranges from like instant gratification to world domination. So
Yes. Yeah.
we don't know if that's officially what it's going to be called, but we did discuss that nomenclature. So yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I like it. I feel like we got to figure out what that middle bucket is, but
yeah,
sort of some
the mediocre domination.
Yeah, continental domination. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, with that program, let's talk about it. So we've got the instant gratification, which is your paid advertising, which is going to give you quick wins.
Let's do this. Let's talk about the why, because I think that's a critical piece, right? So we obviously know each other well, and we talk on several times a week about what we're seeing in different parts of the country and different parts of North America. And one of the things that has become very apparent is there are a lot of practices that are just not sure, like how do you set yourself up for success? And this is very much a different world. And so we were talking about it, what was it, last week, and just saying like people need help and we're here to help. So we spent some time, we grabbed your team, we grabbed my team, we kind of said, all right, well, what does it look like? Like how do you put something together that is cost effective, impactful, and sets a practice up for success, not just in the first 30, 60 days, but also like how do you actually set somebody up? We talked about the momentum in the car. Like how do you get it so that it's easy, and as we get through the rest of 2020 and start getting into 2021, like everything's flowing smoothly. So that was a lot of the genesis of what it is that we're talking about. So anyway, I'll let you get back to the specifics, but I feel like it's always good to kind of share like, hey, here's where we're coming from, is we're trying to figure out what does it look like to help a number of practices that are maybe looking at, hey, production's starting to drop a little bit, right? The backlog is emptying out. How do we make sure that you don't end up with that dip that you got to dig out of?
For sure. I just want to say hi to Julie Stang, because she just wrote, hi, Dr. M. She used to help my practice out. Okay. So with our program, like the reason we're putting this together is a bit of a pay it forward as well. We aren't doing this out of profit. We're just covering our costs to help practices get through 2020. And then things will return to normal in 2021 as far as pricing goes. But we want to really help support the practices right now so that as many practices can survive as possible. So yes, we've got, can I talk about the programs now?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
So we have the instant gratification, which is the paid advertising. So getting people instantly into your practice, they see an ad, they get a call. And that one, your team is going to be quarterbacking a big part of that. I'm going to be helping with group coaching so that your team, the calls that are coming in, we are able to close as many of those calls as possible, because we can present you a whole bunch of leads, but if your phone call is not great and they don't get what you are, then you're going to lose those. So we want to make sure that we are helping you to make the most of that advertising dollar. And then we've got world domination.
Yeah.
You want to talk about world domination?
Yeah. So do you want to talk about world domination? Because you're dominating more of the world than I am. I'm glad to live in your world.
Okay. Well, world domination includes the instant gratification package, but also includes the long-term strategy of building your credibility out on social media. So reaching out to high-level potential clients and connecting with them through social media. So this is an organic strategy, making sure that you're positioning yourself well on social media. So we have group coaching for helping to give you the right ideas to create those videos so that you make the most of it. And then we are helping to produce those videos for you. So we just need the raw materials, and then we'll make you look like a star in a very authentic way. Yeah, and so there's a lot of help surrounding with that. And Scott and I will be on a weekly basis helping to coach you through this phase as well, so that you are supported. So yeah, you can either dominate the world, or you can get instant gratification, or something in between. We haven't figured out.
We got the middle bucket in there. Yeah, and I'll just reiterate. One of the really valuable things that we see is when we work with practices, those practices that understand. The reason why we're like, we like the idea, we call it world domination, because we think that actually is what wins. When we work with practices that are doing both, as have paid campaigns and appreciate the value there, but are also spending the time and building their personal brand. Those practices are the practices that are winning, and they're the practices that will always win. And so that's one of the things that we're really particularly interested in is, again, we work together on a very regular basis. And again, talking about strategies and how these things work together. And so that's a lot of what we're seeing and what we're trying to put together for practices is, how do you take advantage of, Angela's really good at what she does. I'm pretty decent at what I do too. Our teams are pretty darn sharp. How do we make sure that you're able to get some of the best minds in the industry, in terms of in the world of dentistry, focused in on driving success in your practice in Saskatchewan or in Detroit or whatever the case, or some Hartsville, South Carolina, wherever the case might be. It's that sort of collaboration that we personally enjoy, and we also see the benefits from. So yeah, that's kind of where we are. And then because we're all really, really competitive folks, it's probably worth mentioning that that we're competing here. So we believe Dr. Angela Mulrooney incorrectly believed that she'd be more effective in terms of helping more people and connecting with folks and all that kind of stuff. And I correctly believe that people value my Southern charm and the fact that I am very animated on camera and not polished. And so I believe that I can. So if you want to learn more about it, there may be a friendly wager in play between our wonderful host and myself about who's going to get more phone calls. Who do people find more helpful? So if you'd like to be on the winning side and work with a wonderful, wonderful person, call Scott Alexander. If instead you want to talk to somebody maybe a lower level, a wonderful person, call Dr. Angela Mulrooney, and we'd be more than happy to talk to you about the details of it and what would make sense in your practice. Kind of what does that package look like, and more importantly, what are the characteristics that you need to drive success for the rest of 2020? So.
So the moral of this broadcast is I have to let you describe the packages, and then I should describe the competition.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm surprised you didn't cut me off when I got about a third of the way into that. But
yeah, no, I was biting my tongue, literally. So it's all good. There's lots of love. There's lots of love back and forth. We truly are competing. So
we are. There's a competition.
You have the opportunity to pick a call with Scott, or you have an opportunity to pick a call with Ange. I hope you pick Ange. We'll have way more fun than with Scott.
I don't know about that. I don't have a good comeback right now. I'm working on it. I'll have one there in a bit. So that's what I'm going to pick me is. I'll tell them what the comeback is. Yeah.
Well, I honestly think we're going to tie, but it's still fun to try and compete because both of us like winning. So
we do. Yeah, exactly. It's a lot of fun. It's a good time. So yeah, we're excited about it. We'll have more information. Again, if anyone wants to learn more, just reach out and we'll give you all the details. This is our pay it forward. I mean, how do we help folks get back to a good standing and be ready for kind of the rest of 2020? So
yeah, so you can expect details on that coming out. We should be getting it out by the end of next week. So
yes, I think so. Yeah, that's right. So we got the teams working feverishly on that.
Yes. And I just want to say a hi to Dr. Anshul Gupta before we go. So we'll wrap it up there. Thank you, Scott. It's always such a pleasure talking to you about this topic that we both love. So thanks for taking time out of your busy day.
It's my pleasure. By the way, do we want to plug our next one in 2 weeks?
Yes, thank you. Yeah. So the next one is, do you know the date? It's 2 weeks from now.
2 weeks from today. Today's the 24th, so it's going to be somewhere around the 8th.
July 8th, yes.
July 8th, yep. So, so it's going to be, I'm really excited about this one because what we've been talking about so far is, like how do you avoid all the downside and that sort of thing. But, Angie, you and I both have really very positive experiences that we're going to relay when it comes to what's happened in COVID, and most importantly, how have we changed our practices, right? What does the life look like for us now versus 3 months ago? We both have pretty great things to talk about, and really want to be able to share with folks sort of what are those key characteristics, because this is kind of a nerve-wracking time. Again, this
Mhm.
sort of COVID thing, haven't quite figured out how it's going to work. But there's no reason to actually see this as a net negative. This is actually an opportunity to reinvent your brand, to redecide what you want your practice to be, right? And to have those kind of moments. So we're going to share a little bit of our stories, and then what some of the characteristics are and the processes you can go through if you find yourself in a similar situation where you're saying, I gotta make a change to my practice, and how do I go about doing that? So I'm really excited about that.
Yes. Yeah, we're both going to unpack our mindsets on this and splatter it everywhere for people to understand how we do what we do. So yeah, it's going to be great.
Yep, exactly. It'll be a lot of fun. So, all right. Well, thank you so much for letting me be on, and I hope everybody has a great rest of the week.
Thanks. You as well. Bye, Scott. Bye, everybody.
Thanks. Yeah, bye now.